Hi. The next project, I'm going to do a coil piece. And you don't need a lot to do the coil piece. Clay, hands, that's about it. And brush is nice to have. Some ribs, here's a metal one. There's a toothy one for scoring. Needle tool for scoring and cutting the coils. Wooden stick for blending. Plastic rib for blending and smoothing. And a wire. And a board to put everything on. I'm going to start by making a slab. Now, this can be round. Take something, make your slab, take something round and cut around it to get a perfect circle. It can be asymmetrical. That's what I think I'm going to do. It can be out of round. One advantage to hand building versus throwing is you can do things that aren't round. So let me cut a piece off the top here and start by making a slab. So I'm going to throw out the slab first. And you want this to be about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to just put it on my board. And decide on a shape. Now, it's always easier to work on a turntable or work on something that you can turn. I turntable like this, which is nice because it gets it up to eye level. There are low ones, like this, which I think I'm going to use. And you could also use a Lazy Susan. It just has the bearings on the back. And just so you can spin it. Now, it's a good idea. This is a finished board, not to put the clay directly on a finish like this. It should be on something porous. If you have something like this, put a piece of newspaper down first. I'm going to start by cutting out a shape. Now think about how tall the piece is that you're going to be making. If you have a very tall piece, you don't want a very narrow base. So what you want to do is think about the size of the base in relationship to the height. Now, very round. I think I'm going to change it a bit. This is up to you. So start with a slab, and your coils are going to go on top. Don't put them on the side, and don't start the bottom with a coil. It rarely likes to hold together. This will hold together. You start the coil here and build up from here. Just slamming out a thick coil to start with. You kind of work it out into that kind of shape, and then start rolling it. And to roll a coil, you let it roll on the table, and you move your hands out, and it will get longer. Now be careful not to put too much pressure down, because then it'll flatten one side. So you can just move your hands from the center out using your fingertips right in here. Now, if I were to do a really, really large piece, I'd go with coils this thick. This isn't going to be that large, so I'm going to go with smaller coils. And I'll start out the same way. You want a good foundation, just like on a house. And you can roll these in advance. Cover them with plastic to keep them plastic, and then use them. So you don't have to roll for each time you want to add a coil. See how I'm kind of letting it roll a little bit to keep it round? Where you've got a little thick area, focus on that for a minute and work your way out. Now, it doesn't have to be this long to start with. You can do it in small sections. I'm just rolling a nice long one to start. Like I said, the first one should be a little bit thicker than all the rest of them. And you're going to be pinching and squeezing and paddling the walls to make them thinner. Just like you did with your pinch pots. Okay, for the first layer, I'm going to score. And wet it a little bit. Just so I get a really good bond on that first one. Take a little water and put it on there and score it again. I'm going to do the same thing to the coil. Just put a little scratch on it just to help bond it. And then put that coil down on your base. And it's on top of the base. Don't forget that. Now, when you come around to join it, let me show you something. If it's flat like that, you have a fairly decent bond. But look what happens if you cut the clay at an angle. Look how much more space you have compared to that. So when you cut it to join it, cut it at an angle. Dampen that joint a little bit and put it together. Now, I'm going to start on the inside and start blending it, pushing it down into the pot, supporting the outside as I do it. And do that on both sides. So I'm pushing down and blending it at the same time. Now you can come back with your finger and smooth that joint and compress it. And it should be not straight up and down, but have a nice bevel to it. Now I'm just going to leave that outside the way it is right now. Now, since this is plastic clay, I can just add right on top of that. Just going to dampen it a little bit. Don't even need to score it. And bring it around and pinch it off and blend it together. So I'm pushing down and smearing the two coils together. Same thing on the inside. Make sure you really push down and get those two pieces bonded well. At this point, there's usually no problem whatsoever as long as you do it this way. If you come back and want to add more and you have to score and slip that first coil back on, you may have a little bit of a challenge. So make sure you really bond them well together. So I'm taking the rib and just working my way around. And you keep going up, up, up. Okay. Well, moving right along. Got my coil piece started. It's going straight up. Now, as you're working, you can paddle it into a shape. Scrape it. And you never know what you have around your house that can work for scraping. This works really nicely. It's just a putty knife from the hardware store. You also have things like this that you can use like a rib. I want a nice flat top so I can add another coil. So remember, if you've walked away from this like I just did for a little while, it's firm now. Make sure you score and either slip or water before you add that next coil. So you can add a little water on the top and score again. So you get that slip happening. Now, I rolled some, pre-rolled some coils, so I can just get going right away. Now, could put more than one on top of each other like this. Go like 3 high, 2 high, before blending it together. That first one, when the piece is leather hard, make sure you score it. After that, you can just wet it a little bit and blend those pieces together. Now, you can also use tools like this and create a pattern as you're blending it together. Don't forget to do the inside too. Now, I'm really fond of line drawing. So you can actually draw with the coils and leave those coils unblended on the outside. So you can have small ones, like that. You can have elements that break up the space. But make sure, see how I'm coming back in here, and I'm going to blend that together really, really well. At least on one side. Now, right now, this piece is just going straight up. I want it to go out. I suppose I could pinch it out while the clay is still soft. I could push it out with a tool like this. And you can also build it out. And to build it out, normally with the coil, what you do is you put one directly on top of the next one. If you want it to go in a little bit and build it that way. So I went half in, half in, half in, and you can do the reverse and have it go out. So I'm starting out a little bit. Now remember, right now, this clay is pretty soft. So it wants to slump, it wants to collapse. if you really want to make it dramatic, just get some newspaper or put something that can compress underneath there and support it while you're working it. Now you can also build something directly on the table. So check this out. Just going to spiral this up. Maybe put a couple balls in there. And go around. So I have this. Then you take your stick and blend that together. And really blend it. There's a ceramic artist named Al King, or Peter King, excuse me, Peter King, Florida, who does huge, huge wall sculptures and fireplace surrounds. And what he does is he says he sews the clay together. So he goes opposite like this first. And then he blends it. And then that's what you get. So you could take this score here. I like it better that way. Score here. Just be careful not to trap any air. Add a little water, since this is really plastic clay. And then put it together. Blend that back side. So this is quite a mess right now. It has no coherency, but I'm going to work on it and see what I can get out of it. Let me show you one last thing before I stop work on this one today, is how to make really, really, really thin coils. Now, I've been using round ones. A lot of potters will take a coil and flatten it. So instead of a coil, you have like a slab. So with this, what I can do is add it to the back side. Just overlapping it a little bit. And then blend, blend, blend. If your finger doesn't do a good job, use that wooden stick, the end like this, and just come in and get it so you don't see any gaps. So it's blended together really, really well. And you can see how I could come back up and add another one behind like that. And these, of course, could be blended together to make a smooth surface and a much thinner wall. Sew this together a little bit. Just kind of break right down into it and then smear it back together. Pinching along the way. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is how to make really, really, really thin coils, or ones that look like they're really thin. So you've got your coil. And then flatten it. You can see how thin those coils can be, while the wall is still very substantial. I'm going to flatten this out just a little bit. So you can build pieces away from the piece, then add to it. Yeah, that's nice. So to get that to go together, I'm going to soften this a little bit, soften that a little bit, score it, and squish it. Now, as you're working, when it's soft like this, work that inside too. And use the flexible metal rib, or a rib like this. If you want the inside to be rounded, this works really nicely. Or you can customize, use the credit card, and cut it to whatever shape you want. I think this is my favorite. It fits in my hand really nicely. And when you're doing this, you go in opposite directions. Stretch this out just a little bit. And as you're working, you may have a plan to begin with. That's fine. Traditionally, people had made pots all exactly the same because they had a definite function. These don't have to. these can grow. You don't want the walls to be too thick or too thin. So you can see how I'm working the inside, supporting it on the outside as I'm ribbing it and going in opposite directions. You can paddle it to change the shape. You can paddle it to put texture into it. So we'll see what happens to this. Now the outside, if you don't want all this to have all this activity, come back and blend it back together on the outside as well. And when you use the toothy rib and go in opposite directions, it'll take away the highs and lows and the bumps and lumps. So, what you don't want to use is water. There. So I used the serrated rib, and now I'm going to use the credit card. I'm going over in opposite directions and smoothing and refining that shape. So this is kind of a hodgepodge. It's got lots of different things happening on it. You know, it's got fine lines, it's got paddling, it's got making an element separate. It's got smoothing. And then, of course, look, you can stretch it out while it's still plastic to give it that rounder, more voluminous, you know, full shape. Now, when you're done for the day, you probably can't finish this all in one day. Cover it. Cover it really well. And definitely cover the top edge. You might even want to take some saran wrap or maybe even aluminum foil and just wrap it around that top edge to keep that top edge plastic. So when you come back to add to this, it will be soft and easy to add to. I can leave this part out and open. It'll firm up. If you're going out, leave it open, but cover up the top where you're going to be adding to it. Okay. I think that's enough for one day. Thank you.